If I can't hear what you're saying, I see your lips moving. It says you're muted.
Yeah, give me 1 second. I just wanted to make sure I had everything set up the right. All right, there it is. The right way. And I don't have that delay thing. All right, do me a favor, y'all. Type 1. Type 1. Pastor Major, tell me we're sounding like we're in there. Okay, we're good now. All right, they say we're good now. Grace and peace, everybody. Y'all already know what it is. I'm going to read the Brother Dante. You want to say something? I want to make sure I hear you before I go on. Alton, good to see you.
Yeah, I'm here. You got me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You sound good. I'm gonna give you some time to introduce yourself, and we're gonna get into it. We've been trying to work some stuff out for a while, and we finally think that we got something going. I want to say that it's, we're glad to have you on here and everything, and hopefully this can clear up a lot of what's going on. Of course, a lot of people say they want to get an understanding. They don't want to get an understanding, but they don't want to talk. Do me a favor, y'all share this video. I don't know how they're going to get an understanding if they don't want to talk, or they'll see a video and just throw some shots to see a video as opposed to sitting down to the table and getting some clarity. So hopefully with you coming on here, that's going to definitely help us out a little bit. But do me a favor, tell us about yourself. Tell us about yourself and the work that you're involved in, you have been involved in the past, and what you're currently involved in.
All right. So in the past, I got started around 2009 was when I really got publicly started with everything. A lot of people remember me from my book, As the Days of Noah Were, back when I was still dealing with L.A. Marzulli, Steve Quayle, Mike Heiser, who else was it? Dr. Future. It was a bunch of those guys in that, what they call the fringe Christian circle. And so I got really heavily involved into the supernatural, doing studies on angels, demons, Nephilim. And that work kind of led me into getting into alien abduction and just sort of the paranormal side of everything and trying to figure out how it fits into the Bible. So around 2014, just to kind of fast track, Teo Ministries started asking me to look into whether or not Black people were the true Israelites of the Bible, specifically Black people in America. So I kind of blew them off for a while. And I didn't even want to look into it because I was of the same opinion as many people in the church. We know who Israel is. There's no way Black people in America or the islands or anywhere else are the true Israelites. But I've always been a person who will chase down history, and I respect the brothers at Teo. And so when they kept asking me to do it, I said, okay, these brothers are smart brothers, so it has to be something about it that's convinced them to even ask me to look. So I went and looked. And when I did, lo and behold, I found what I found. And so I started talking about it to that audience, which was predominantly white at the time.
Yes, yes.
And at the time, I had about 30,000 subscribers on ministerfortson.com. And again, predominantly white. So as soon as I started talking about the evidence that I found, I hadn't even come out and said, hey, Israel is definitely Black. I was sharing the evidence as I found it. Everybody just disappeared. Everybody cut off associations with me. My subscriber base went from 30,000 to about 5,000. And so I started blackhistoryinthebible.com to sort of just share the information. And my goal was to approach it from the line of Ham, only the line of Ham. And it was through the line of Ham that I kept running into Israelites mixing with Hamites. And common sense tells me when I see somebody mix with a Black person, they come out a darker person. And so if they keep doing this all throughout history and all throughout the Bible, it makes sense that they look like Hamites. And so when I saw that in the Bible, that they kept being mistaken for people from the lineage of Ham, it all tied together for me. And since then, I've just been digging deeper and then sharing the information.
Okay, so it's a little different. You came from a different perspective. I know that circle there, and I think I actually did. That was your first book, you said. I think I actually have that one there because
that was my second.
That was your second?
Yep.
Okay, I remember following those gentlemen over there when they were talking about a lot of that stuff. And the majority of that community, they are, you know, they're definitely Europeans and everything. But what's the problem? What's the problem with how do you see Christianity looking at everything, specifically the urban apologists and things of that nature? Are you familiar with the brother Motherland Bounce, the brother that went over to Israel and he's living over there now? He was a rapper from Washington.
No,
Nazim, I believe his name is. Are you familiar with him and his conversion story?
no, I'm not.
Yeah, well, he grew. I think he grew up in Portland. He as he said, his mother and his parents were in the street. A black brother. His parents were in the street. They were in the hood, and he started getting into the rap music. But he said he started digging in life and searching out some things, and he ended up converting to Judaism. This is what a lot of Christianity believe. If you look in Acts the 8th chapter and you run across the Ethiopian and stuff like that, or if you do find a darker people, somebody like, let's say, Sammy Davis Jr. or Tiffany Haddish, they came to Israel through conversion. And the people that I do talk to that I would consider kind of steep into history, that is of the Christian faith, they are more so of that persuasion. Are you of that persuasion that there are people that converted, or you believe that Moses per se was a black man? I hate to even say it like that.
I mean, it to me, it's common sense once you really approach it honestly. They were in Africa. Moses was put in the Nile River in Africa as a baby. And Moses grew up in an African household. He was trained in all the ways of the Egyptians. They were Africans. And we know what the Egyptians look like based on paintings that they left. And so when he gets mistaken for an Egyptian, a lot of the times the church wants to downplay it to he had makeup on and he was dressed like an Egyptian. And it doesn't make sense when you see the miracle of him putting his hand in his bosom and he pulls his hand out and it's leprous as snow. It tells me his hand was the opposite color. So somebody to me who has who's a Caucasian, turning their hand white isn't a sign. But if you're black and the Most High turns your hand white and then turns it black again, that's a huge sign to the Egyptians because nobody was changing skin color. And I believe it kind of ties into that reference. Can a leopard change its spots? No, it can't. And so that becomes a sign. So yeah, that I believe Moses was black, and just like I believe the rest of the Israelites were black, because they were all mistaken for Egyptians when they went to go bury Jacob. And what was it? Joseph. He couldn't be recognized apart from the Egyptians. His brothers didn't know who he was. And again, if the Egyptians are black and the Israelites are not, it seems that they should stand out as a different people, and yet they don't. And so from Moses all the way to Paul, we see Israelites mistaken for people from Ham. And we see Israelites mixing with people from Ham. So I believe that they were a black nation. They didn't convert.
What would you do with the people that would automatically be alarmed, especially within the body of Christ? People that would automatically be alarmed with saying you're bringing color into the thing. No matter, I've done videos with other people and we've discussed whitewashing, but people that would say that you're bringing color into the gospel, one, and two, the second question arises that's really troubling to a lot of people. What do you say about, and you can answer this if you want to, because I know a lot of people would get offended even with dealing with certain issues like that. What do you say about the people that are in Israel right now, if that's what you're saying? Because that'll trouble a large fan base, Christian, European, all type of people. What do you say about those people in light of what you found?
So I don't even have to give my opinion on this. So if you go to haaretz.com, it's an Ashkenazi Jewish owned publication. I've been sharing the link in the Biblical Rumble Room. Let me see if I can post the link. I'll try to post the link in the chat room. But if you go to haaretz.com, there is a article directly from an Ashkenazi Jewish publication. And the headline is this: study traces Ashkenazi roots to European women who probably converted to Judaism. This is them talking about their own history. And this is in 2013, October 11, 2013. So if you go through and read that, and you can read Kessler and you can read a bunch of other people who are Ashkenazi Jews, and they will tell you that they come from European converts. So here's where I don't get what the problem is. When we say it, it's a problem, but if they say it, nobody says anything and they just ignore it. And when we share these sources, we get called liars, even though we're not the ones putting out that information. And so people that get alarmed, it's because, as you mentioned, whitewashing. The Renaissance period, starting around the late 1300s, early 1400s, the entire purpose of the Renaissance period was to repaint everything into a European worldview. And so those images continue to get pushed. And yet, when we read the documentation in the books coming out from the 1800s, published by universities, we see a different story. We see a story of Black Israelites. They're described as having Negroid features in some books, even by racists. They were still saying, hey, these guys are Black. Even though we're racist, we believe the Jews are Black. We don't see the pushing of a white Jewish nation until around 1899, when the formation of the Zionist Federation happened. And then we, as we move into the early 1900s, you can get into the Balfour Agreement. You can get into the, what was it? Let me see. I'm forgetting the name right now. The Mandate for Palestine. I believe that was 1920 or I think I'm mixing up the dates between the Balfour.
The formation of land and everything. Yes, yes.
Right, with the League of Nations in England. And so they went in there and they split up that land to give them a nation. And then by 1948, when they had the nation, you start hearing this lie pushed among the church that they fulfill the prophecy of a nation born in a day. Well, that's not true. And it started trying to build that nation since 1899. It was 49 years in the making before it even became a nation. So they didn't fulfill the prophecy. And ever since then, the narrative has been pushed that they are the chosen people, even though their own history doesn't agree with that.
What about the British Israelism now? Because you know that and people are arguing that it could be the same exact thing. The same exact thing that you're doing. You're trying, like they're claiming that God chose them, and that's how come he built up England and most of Europe, because those were the chosen Jews that dispersed and went over there to that land. And oftentimes among apologists and different people, you'll hear certain things. You'll hear about Cherry, you'll hear about Wentworth and those people. You think it's best to go further back and deal with evidences from further back to destroy that type of argument?
I mean, it doesn't even matter where we pull evidence from. You will find all throughout history, Black people calling themselves Israel. So,
okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'll read it, and then I'll read a comment that I see came in here. Watch you're going, Sister E, grace and peace. Do me a favor. Post that link too. Post that link that he just said. You know, I got the phone in one hand and this coffee in the other. Thank you. Good to see you, Sister E. I'm sorry. Go ahead, brother. Finish.
Yeah. So if you go back in history, you will find references to Black Israel starting in the Bible, since a lot of people want to start at the Bible, since that's what we believe.
I started the Bible. Yeah,
you keep seeing this reference. Even the first book, Genesis, where does it start out at? It mentions a river that surrounds Ethiopia, and we know Ethiopia is in Africa, and at some point it was a much larger chunk of Africa was referred to as Ethiopia. And then you see them back and forth in Africa. They're in Egypt. But most telling is Isaiah 11. When you really, really want to get into Bible prophecy and we start talking about the coming of Christ, it almost never involves Isaiah 11:11, because then you have to start looking at the geography and where he says he's going to recover his people from. And Isaiah 11:11 says, it shall come to pass in that day that the Lord shall set his hand again the second time to recover the remnant of his people, which should be left from Assyria and from Egypt and from Pathros and from Cush and from Elam and Shinar and Hamath and the islands of the sea. We don't see any mention of Europe. And so this concept of British Israelism is based on a false history that in order to escape persecution, that the Jews fled into the Caucasus, and through whatever weird history, they became the British and American empires. And so they are ruling because they are chosen of God. And yet we don't see the history match that when we start to dig into the history of Spain and Portugal and the Inquisition and why they were moved out of Portugal on into West Africa, Sao Tome and Principe. And we also don't learn in the church and even in school that some of the Jews, in order to escape being forced to convert to Christianity during the Inquisition, they bought passage to America, and some of them came over on ships to America via the Dutch. And that's another source I have. If any of you have heard of JSTOR. Let me make sure I got the name right. I think it's jstore.org. They did require you to have a membership to access more than 6 articles a month. But now, because of the virus, they're actually giving access to 100 articles a month, which is the same as the subscription level. So if you go there for free and sign up, you can get access to all of that and read a lot of this history. And it's academic journals, it's peer-reviewed journals. And you will,
JSTOR's legit, everybody. That's legit stuff. I think it was the president of one of the presidents of Harvard that started it. It's a scholarly site with scholarly articles. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Right, exactly. And and it says on the front, if you get there, it says journals, primary sources, and books. And I do pay for the monthly subscription to JSTOR. And so I pull a lot of articles, academic references. Most recently, I found one from 1997 that is a essay or a report on slavery. And it's called "Is the Jew White?" And they talked about, even at the beginning of slavery, Europeans doubted the claims of the Ashkenazi Jews to be actual Israel, because at the time, the majority of people believed Israel was black. And so when we run into this, the church often doesn't want to deal with this. They don't care what the history says. They don't care what the Bible says. They have determined what they want to believe in most cases, and they're going to run with that regardless. And so when we try to push for evidence, there's almost always a lack of evidence coming from the church as far as historical sources go to prove that Israel was white, and yet we get opposed. And so this idea of British Israelism is really, really ingrained into the church, and it's almost impossible to break a lot of people of that ideology.
You think a lot of this have to do with people like pushing Christian Israelism, like John Hagee and people of that sort, pushing the blessings on Israel? And if you from the scripture in Genesis, if you bless those that bless you, and we got to tithe to Israel and be connected with Israel and pray for Israel and all of that. So you think it has anything to do with that?
I think it has 100% to do with that. And we see that because America gives billions to Israel every single year, the people they believe to be Israel. And yet, when we start to say, hey, Israel was black, and even a person that's convinced sometime, they'll say, well, so what? And yet, when they thought it was the other people, they were willing to give money. They were willing to give support. They want to back everything they do. They don't criticize those people. And yet, when it comes to us, it's a whole different energy, even if they believe we are Israel. And I think part of it is not just Hagee and them. I think the Christian movie industry has a big thing to do with it, because if you watch a lot of Christian films, you see white Egyptians, you see white Israelites, you see a white Moses, yes, you see a white Christ. And we know historically this isn't accurate, because he was in the Middle East and told to hide in Africa. The Most High would not tell a European man to go hide among people in Africa because they're black, and he would stand out. They just, hey, where's the white kid that came over here? They could point him out. And I don't believe that to be the case. And every time Israel had to flee, they fled towards Egypt. You would flee towards people who look like you, scatter into Africa. And again, going back to Isaiah 11:11, that's where he says he's going to gather some of his people from, is out of Africa. So if that's the case, we should see a large Jewish population sprouting up within Africa during the time when they're going to be regathered. And if you look around, Nigeria, Ghana, Zimbabwe, and a bunch of other ones, I know I'm missing a lot of them, but a bunch of other African nations now have a lot of black people, African people, that say, you know what, we're not African as, what we call it, but we're Israelites, we're Jewish, we're the original people. And we see this awakening, and it's not just over here in America, even though a lot of the church would like to think it's just an American phenomenon. It's not, it's everywhere.
Alton, I'm sorry, Alton, you that kind of basically what he was answering goes into your question, because I was getting ready to read your question. Alton, that has a YouTube channel that's involved in urban apologetics, says, what happened to all the black Jews in Israel? Why isn't there a significant remnant in Israel or any Aboriginal people in that region? That's kind of going into that right there, Alton. Just type yes or no. And did he just answer that basically before I even read the question?
Well, I'll go a little bit deeper into it. So in 70 AD, when they were invaded and they had to disperse, a lot of them fled into Israel. Some of them were captured. And even if you get into around 800 AD, if anybody wants to go look up Eldad the Danite, Eldad the Danite is described as a black Jew from the tribe of Dan. And he says that the tribes were scattered into Africa. We see that some of them ended up in Spain and Portugal, and which comes back to what we were saying. They got deported into West Africa. So you see them dispersed from their homeland as a nation, and they get split up. So you don't see a huge population there since that time. Now, some of them have started to migrate back, like the Ethiopian Jews and some of the others. But if you really go research how they're treated there, they're treated as second-class citizens. There's a lot of
Yeah,
racism that goes on in
definitely.
Israel.
A lot. Yes, definitely. Go ahead. Yeah, a lot of it going on. And they're
Right.
complaining about it. And the government, they even brought a lot from Ethiopia, but they're treated on a whole different level. Kind of like, racism was here back in the days. It's almost that bad. Go ahead, sir.
Let me see. I think it was, let me make sure. I forget what it's called. I have to go find the name. I want to say it's Project Noah's Ark, but it's not. There was actually
Operation Moses.
there you go, Operation Moses, but there was one other than Operation Moses that I found that was, let me make sure here. This is 1984. I believe there was one either before or after Operation Moses. Operation Solomon. That's
Okay.
the one. Operation Solomon was in 1991, where they started to move the Ethiopian Jews by plane to Israel. And Operation Moses was, let me see, in the 1980s, I believe. So you have two of these that acknowledge that, yes, there are Black Jews coming out of Africa and they're accepted as Black Jews. And yet when we make the claim, we are one of the scattered tribes. Some people say Judah directly, but my research has turned up that the people transported from Portugal to West Africa claim to be Judah, Benjamin, and Levi, and they all sort of got mixed together. And so we don't necessarily know what tribe we're from. I know a lot of people want to identify as Judah, but in actuality, it's likely we're one of the descended from one of those three tribes. And I personally don't say, hey, I'm Judah or I'm Levi or anything like that, because I know the history and I know that they got all mixed up during the slave trade.
Yes, that leads into more confusion. So you're not one that believe in the chart whatsoever.
No, I don't believe in that chart whatsoever. I just haven't found it to be true. I do know that there are Afro Latinas and, people that come about that sort of way. But I don't believe that everybody that is, say, Native American is Israel or anything like that.
Okay. You think that do you think that would that brings on some more of the confusion, the chart and different groups or camps pushing charts and different things of that nature, trying to bring everybody in, all of the Cherokee, Hopi, everybody, and just trying to bring them all into Israel, talking about they're scattered and we're specifically Judah and stuff like that. You believe all of that is that's too pseudo?
I mean, it's not even necessarily pseudo. It's the same thing that the church has been trying to do, is everybody's equal to Israel. It's just from a different perspective. They just break it down into nationality instead of just saying, hey, everybody, well, there's Latino and there's Native American and there's this and that. I mean, it basically equates everybody except for Europeans. That's basically the chart, is everybody except for Europeans for the most part is Israel. And we know from a historical perspective that just doesn't make sense. And a lot of those histories don't match when you start to, if you want to use the Deuteronomy 28 argument, it can't be used for a lot of those nations on the chart. And so you either have to back away from the Deuteronomy 28 argument as proof or back away from those people as Israel. And when I found that a lot of the stuff, not even just Deuteronomy 28, the rest of the history didn't add up for a lot of those people. And so I don't accept the chart as valid.
What about salvation? What about salvation? As soon as you start talking about Israel and you start talking about nationality and the people and things of that nature, you're not trusting in the finished work of Christ. Ephesians 2:8-9. What do you say to people that would bring that up to you?
Well, matter of fact, we can take it to the Bible, Philippians. If we go to Philippians chapter 3, let's start at verse 3. For we are the circumcision which worship God in the spirit and rejoice in Jesus Christ and have no confidence in the flesh, though I might also have confidence in the flesh. If any other man thinketh that he hath whereof he might trust in the flesh, I more circumcised the 8th day, of the stock of Israel, of the tribe of Benjamin, a Hebrew of Hebrews, as touching the law, of Pharisee. So Paul wasn't afraid to talk about his nationality and even break it down to his office as a Pharisee. And he does that on occasions. He does it in Romans 11, all through Romans 11 when he gets into the grafting. He does it in Romans 1. It's mentioned in Acts chapter 21 when he's asked, is he an Egyptian? He says, no, I'm a Jew of Tarsus. So it's possible to identify as Israel and still believe in the finished work of Christ. Ethnicity has nothing to do with belief system. We've heard Farrakhan say that Black people are the true children of Israel, and we know Farrakhan is a Muslim. And so saying that because we embrace our nationality as Israelites, that we can't believe in the finished work of Christ is just false. Because you can be an Israelite and a Christian, you can be an Israelite and a Muslim, you can be an Israelite and a Buddhist, because Israelite is nationality and your belief system then is something separate. And so I don't believe there's a conflict of interest at all, because you'll see people say I'm Italian and I'm Christian, I'm Irish Christian, I'm Dutch and I'm Christian. They embrace their nationality and they embrace Christianity at the same time, and nobody ever tells them that they're putting culture over Christ or exchanging their ethnicity for religion or for
Yeah.
salvation.
So you are a Christian in every
I
sense of the word.
I identify as Christian. If someone means the term to be Christ follower, I don't mind being called a Christian at all, as long as they mean someone who follows Christ. Now, if they want to get into the denominations, I do not belong or adhere to any specific Christian denomination, but I do follow Christ. So the term Christian in that aspect does not bother me at all.
Okay. All right. I want to go off a little something else. I'm trying to look at some of these comments. Recently, some people were attempting to, I don't even know if they really got into the history and certain things you were setting forth in the video, but there's a sister that put a video out. She was rebutting your thing and she felt that she was disrespected, and everybody said you disrespected her, and therefore I think people couldn't even get down to what the whole argument was about. The whole rebuttal was about in the video. Can you help clear some of that stuff up? I didn't say any names. I'm not sure if you want to or whatever, how deep you want to get into that. But people would say certain things like, well, this brother made a video and he used bad language and he said something that offended me. And, once you do that to some believer, you disqualified, they can't hear anything else.
Okay, well, let's talk about it. I wanted to point out the hypocrisy of the urban apologetics movement, because if you look at some of the stuff that Faithful to God says to women, and specifically Sister E, they haven't checked him about it not one time.
Okay.
And so I didn't disrespect her on the video. I called her a false teacher, but I didn't single her out. If people watch the videos about her and Damon Richardson, it wasn't just about her. She was the only one that replied. Now, number two, they tried to change it into a thing and make it, I attacked a woman. But no, again, if you go listen, it was her and Damon Richardson together. I went after them equally. I never made it about gender at all whatsoever. And if you go look at her video that she posted, the reply, there were a lot of lies in the video. And that's evident by the fact that if you go read the comment section, you can see people calling her out in the comment section. And you can see that the number of dislikes is higher than the number of likes on the video, because people knew that what she was saying wasn't true. And so if you go watch my follow-up video, I actually made a follow-up video to that to point out every single lie that took place. Because once they latch on to something, they go with it super hard. And so one of the things that happened in between all of this back and forth, she made an 11-minute response video first. Before that video, there was an 11-minute response video posted on Facebook that she did. After she made some Facebook comments. The first Facebook comment was that that she admitted that there were Jews in West Africa. And she said, true enough. And then she says they're European. She said these were European Jews being deported to West Africa. So then people started asking for sources, to which she would not provide a source. And when she finally did provide a source, I kind of went over it a little bit. That source points back to Jews being black. And so again, I pointed out, said, look, this right here is the misrepresentation that we're seeing. They will concede a point and then make another statement and not back that up. And so it happened over and over and over again. So I started calling people out. Well, anyway, back to her 11-minute response video. She made the 11-minute response video. I don't know if it's still up because she blocked me from the page. And so in response to that, I called her a loudmouth ratchet that would be more suitable for love and hip hop than apologetics. That's exactly what I said in response to her 11-minute video, not to any of her other stuff, but specifically that 11-minute video. And so, of course, they take it out of context because they don't want to talk about that 11-minute video she made. And then after she made that 11-minute video, she came out with that 4-hour-long thing she did, almost 4 hours long. And so that's the timeline of everything happening. But my original video was to her and Damon Richardson, saying that Judah had nothing to do with the tribe of Judah, which just isn't true based on records from the 1600s all the way up to the 1800s.
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm trying to read the comments. Yeah. Somebody else said, all right, no, we're along some other lines right now. All right. Anything else you wanted to say on that? I agree with I think there's been a good bit of back and forth, and for some reason people will take something and they will twist something up. As Fortson, it would he fellowship and worship with those that identify with Christians. You have a problem walking in a Christian church?
I still attended Christian church from time to time, not often. It's usually once every few months. I will go to a Christian church. I don't mind at all. I've gone to Baptist church. A lot of my family is involved in Baptist churches out here. A lot of my family grew up Kojic. A lot of my family grew up non-denominational. A lot of friends as well. And so I do go visit their churches from time to time because I get invited to those churches from time to time. Not to speak anymore. Of course, they don't let me teach in these churches. I done got kicked out of a few churches too. But I don't mind going to churches with fellow believers because there are a lot of Black believers in the Christian church that identify as Israel. I know some pastors right now that are Black pastors over Christian churches that identify as Israel, communicate with me, their congregation believes, and yet they're not open with it because of the backlash that comes with it.
I have to, I hate to even agree. I have to agree with, I've met a few pastors, deacon, people with all type of positions, and they've secretly said some stuff to me too, but they don't want to come out. I don't know. I don't even ask anymore. That's like Freemasonry within the church, fraternities within the church. It's just there. And, people they just don't want to really come out and say what they're into, but it's something that's going on there. And the more I've tried to shed light on it, the more people have been offended in all actuality. But my thing is like, I spoke to a few people, and behind closed doors, they're quick to say this and that and what their grandmother always taught them and all of this stuff. But I guess just as a job, as a minister, or like you said, for the backlash, maybe they won't really come out and bring out what's what. Let me see. I see one of my people in the chat said, "So what's the point? You're Israel, so what?" That attitude, a lot of crap. The chat might be my Baptist people too. That's my people. What do you think about that? If someone said that right there to you, what's the point?
I say, let's rephrase that. You're Irish, and so what? You're Dutch, and so what? You're Italian, and so what? They won't say it to other people about their nationality. They only have that attitude about Black people who identify as Israel. Like, for example, you can say you're Cushite. They don't ever come to you and say you're Cushite, so what?
Never.
But if I say I'm Israel, you're Israel, and so what? So what is, it's my nationality, and I have a right to my culture, just like somebody who's an Italian that likes Italian food, or somebody who's Chinese that eats the type of food Chinese people eat. I know they just call this, food in their culture, but it's the same thing. These people are allowed to embrace and celebrate their culture. And yet when it's us, we're, for whatever reason, there's a special set of rules for Black people. We're not allowed to embrace our culture, our heritage, or talk about our history or our past or anything else that everybody else gets a pass for. And that's what I always say to that. Why is that energy towards us and not towards everybody else?
You hear that, Rick? Because I'm going to read something that Rick just said in here. He said that he went to your channel, and your entire channel is saturated by nationality. This was posted before you started even commenting. I think this was already posted here. What would you say to that? You want to continue?
Now,
all right, go ahead.
Anybody is welcome to go to my channel right now, the homepage of my channel, and they're going to see that's not the truth. Because if you go to my channel right now, I have stuff on there about salvation. I have a ton of stuff on there about the supernatural, Nephilim giants, hybridization, and stuff like that. I have a ton of history stuff. Again, when we start talking about our history, suddenly, well, it's all about nationality. Well, if I go to a school and take a history class, that's all saturated with European nationality. But when it comes to us, we're not allowed to teach our own history. Otherwise, we're considered racist, or we're too focused on race. No, they're too focused on race. Until they start saying this to everybody else who teaches their history, I don't feel they have a right to say it to us. Otherwise, it's them making it about race, not us. We call ourselves Israelites. They call us Black Hebrew Israelites. They're the ones throwing that term Black in there. We don't call ourselves Black Hebrew Israelites. They have made it about race since day one. And yet when we talk about race, somehow we are the bad guy and they are 100% in the right. And to me, it's a double standard, and it's an unfair double standard to tell us we can't talk about our own history.
All right, Rick, I want you to, you heard what he just said, Rick. You're a couple of seconds behind us. Father G said in the Catholic Church, Europeans are notorious for labeling themselves as Irish Catholic, Romanian Catholic, Polish Catholic. Yes, they are. You agree, Father G, that it's a double standard that's going on here. Who is salvation for? That's what I'm asking you right now. This isn't in the question. This isn't in the question section in the comments. This is Berean asking Brother Dante, who is salvation for?
I'll read it right here. I'll read it right here. Romans chapter 1, verse 15 through 15 through 16. So as much as is in me, I am ready to preach the gospel to you that are in Rome also. For I am not ashamed of the gospel of Christ, for it is the power of God unto salvation to everyone that believeth, to the Jew first, and also to the Greek. And again, we have Paul mentioning his ethnicity or his heritage to the
along
Jew
with
first,
salvation.
and
That book,
also
you just
to
read
the
out the
Greek.
book right there, Alton. He just read out the book right there. All right, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Anything? I'm trying to read the comments as you're talking.
I believe it's exactly as Paul says. Now, my personal opinion is that salvation is for everybody that believes, not just Israel, but everybody, to the Jew first and then to the Greek also, to the Jew first and then to the Gentile. That's consistent with scripture. And so I don't back away from that and say salvation is only for Israel. And I know a lot of people disagree with that, but my position is that salvation is for everybody, as Paul said, to the Jew first and then to the Greek, to the Jew first and then to the Gentile.
When somebody bring up Israel to you, do you look at Asian looking people as Israel? When somebody bring up Israel to you, in your mind, what do you see?
Well,
people, dreads. Do you see light skinned people? What do you see? Blue eyed people. What do you see in your mind when you hear Israel, in your biblical mind?
Well, here's the thing. Israel traced through the father, and we know that the people there in the land now trace through the mother. That's one of the biggest differences. So to say that there's a certain look to Israel, we know that there's no certain look to Black people in general. We come in all shades, from albino white skin to like the darkest dark.
Blue, black, yes.
Right. And so I don't see any specific tone. I would more so ask them, their history. And most times I don't even question people about it. If somebody's Black and they say they're Israel, fine, whatever. I don't care. I don't picture any specific look when I think of Israel, because I know there's a lot of people. Again, our people come in all shapes and sizes and colors. And so there's no one specific look. But for example, if somebody says, hey, all the Black people over there stand in the room together, I would expect the albino guy to stand next to the blue black guy and me in the room together, because I see that albino guy as a Black person, even though his skin ain't Black.
Does the word Trinity bother you?
Not at all. I believe the concept. I don't really get into the semantics of words. For example, people can say the rapture is not in the Bible, and yet when you go to the Greek, you see the harpazo is in the Bible, and it's the same general context as the rapture. Yeah. And so when somebody says Trinity, it doesn't bother me, because I understand we classify things as new words as language develops. So if you have a Father, Son, and a Holy Spirit, that's the concept of the Trinity, whether or not the word Trinity itself appears in the Bible.
Alton, you hear that? That was my question that I threw out there, because I know certain questions that will come up, and people would hear you make that statement that you just made right there and go do a video and run amok with a video saying something different. Right. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm trying to read the comments. Anything else that you'd like to share whilst I'm going through some of these comments and I'm thinking things up as they're going along? I'm trying to get to these. Go ahead, brother. You got the floor.
Oh, well, I don't really have too much to say on the Trinity. Again, I'm more about what concept is there and what concept is not, because I think a lot of times we get caught up on semantics in general, and then the semantics separate us. And a lot of times we're saying the same exact thing, we're just using different words, and we've created a division over words. It's like soccer and football. If you go overseas, soccer is called football. But over here it's called soccer. So if you want to get in a fight with somebody over football versus soccer, and you're talking about the same sport, both of y'all kind of look foolish. And so I think it's more important to get to the core of the issue versus the semantics of the word at the surface.
Yes, let me see. She said, Sister E, she said they're going to run amok. They can't help themselves. No, it's different people, but I think clarity is good here. Clarity is good here on this thing right here. What do you say about other people that I've often heard people in camps using scriptures, and the scriptures that they use, some would argue to bring out their point, to justify the chart or whatever, to justify this doctrine that they're teaching, and they're taking scriptures out of context. What would you say to that?
I believe a lot of people take scriptures out of context, but There are a lot of scriptures that do support the camps. I don't believe the camps are 100% wrong in everything they do. For example, I heard you mention it and other people mentioned it, the I am black unto the ground.
Yes.
I agree that that does not refer to their skin color. That refers to an emotional state if you really break it down and understand that part of the text. But when you get to the Song of Solomon, the woman, when she says, I am black but lovely, and then she goes on to say, I am black because the sun looked down upon me. And so since they can't explain that away, you'll hear a lot of church people say, well, she was just referring to she had a tan. But she says, I'm black as the curtains of Kedar, or I'm sorry, the tents of Kedar and the curtains of Solomon. So she's giving comparison. She's using similes. When Miriam is turned white as snow after she gets on Moses.
Moses' wife, yes.
Right. She gets on, she gets into it. The Most High says, step outside, and he turns her white as snow. The first thing Aaron and Moses do is pray for her because they said she looks like a stillborn baby. So you can really get into a lot of this stuff and find supportive verses outside of the normal verses. Another one, the Gehazi, when he was cursed. Gehazi was cursed to be white forever, him and his descendants, which means he was not white if he got cursed. He was not white at all. He had to be a different color. And so these are verses that the church often doesn't deal with. I never once heard the Gehazi story in church.
That's that's Elijah's armor bearer, I guess.
Right.
Yes. I'm saying for the people that may not be familiar with that, when he went back and he took the jewelry and he took the raiment and stuff like that, and Elijah said the curse will be upon you. And we often use that to say, because they would argue with us to curse a Ham and all of this other stuff, unbiblical stuff, might I add. They would add a lot of that stuff in. But you're right, a lot of people don't bring up things like that. Let me try to go on here. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, but see, that's just a couple of things you can point to and say, okay, well, maybe these people weren't the people that we see now. Maybe they were a darker color if you had to curse them to be that color. Same thing with Moses, again, the miracle where he put his hand in his bosom and it came out white. We see Samson described as having locks. Now, again, they're running around.
But you do agree that where it said I am black, you agree that that's the woman speaking, that's not Solomon, because some people.
No, that's the woman. That's the woman.
Okay, great. All right, go ahead.
That's the woman. And then even when you get to the color ruddy, they try to make it as this rosy cheek color.
Yes, light skin. David, they were light skinned, little, yes, and the red cheeks when they blush and all of that stuff.
Right, and here's where the semantics come in. Even sometimes among the camps, you will see them try to differentiate between red and ruddy, and yet when you go into the Strongs, you'll see that the same word admonai is used for both red and ruddy. So now it comes to a point is when they talk about this red heifer, the cow that needs to be sacrificed. If we're going to remain consistent, and the word is admonai for both, either that is a white blushing cow, or that cow is brown, like they say it is. And if that cow is brown, then when we see David referred to as ruddy, that's also David's color. And when we see Esau referred to as red, since it's the same word, that's also Esau's color. So we have to remain consistent in interpretation, and we do that if we read the Strongs and we're not trying to twist and bend the text to fit our preconceived notions.
Well, what we've seen in Hollywood. So what do you say about works like Dr. Ben, We the Black Jews? What do you say about that? That's been prevalent in the conscious community. The story of the Moors in Spain. Some people argue that the Jews were even mixed up in that whole thing right there. In another book, let me just mention those books, The Story of the Moors in Spain, the 13th Tribe. What do you say to Kessler and those people? What do you say to those books?
I mean, Kessler is supported. I actually have a series called Go Ask Your Pastor. Anybody can go on my channel and watch the series, Go Ask Your Pastor. And I do cover, there are books that support Kessler. Kessler said they converted around the 8th century. I recently covered, I believe it was on episode 8 or 9 of Go Ask Your Pastor. I covered another source that gives you 740 AD as the time of the Ashkenazi Jewish conversion. So they agree with Kessler. And you'll find other books too that talk about the one of the books I just went over. Let me see if I can pull up the name of it real quick. But one of the books I did just go over in that series, it talks about matter of fact, it was episode 10, the last episode I did. It talks about the white Jew didn't arrive until well after the Christian era. And so Yeah, and I have all those sources to anybody that wants the direct sources to those. If you go to my Go Ask a Pastor series, you click the description. The links are in the description of every video I do. I freely give the links. You don't have to answer any questions before you get the links. I don't have to see if you believe me or not before you get the links. All the links to the sources are in my descriptions. So if you want the links to what I'm talking about right now, go to the Go Ask Your Pastor series, click the description, and then you can read the source for yourself in its entirety.
Okay. Matter of fact, do me a favor. Give your information out too.
All right. Everything's under Dante Fortson, DanteFortson. My YouTube channel. Yep, YouTube, Facebook. I believe Twitter's under Black History in the Bible. I have a lot of evidence on my website too, blackhistoryinthebible.com. You can go there and find links to different sources. And you can actually find a lot of picture evidence as well, like maps and carvings and archaeological dig site stuff found from archaeological dig sites. So it's not just about we're trying to read something into the Bible or reinterpret history. And I personally focus on a lot of the European sources for the fact that
very good.
They try to say, well, there's an agenda if you're Black and you're teaching your own history.
Yes.
And yet they don't keep that same energy when a European person comes and says it. They won't call that European a liar for saying it, but they will call us a liar for sharing what that European wrote.
Being said, yes. Somebody else, these are the souls of our ancestors. Let me just give you this before we get out of here. I think I'm getting ready to check out. Berean, ask him about, what about the West Africans? Somebody said to ask you, the souls of our ancestors. Good to see you, sis. She said, ask you about the West Africans that were taken and brought over here, basically. I'm freestyling her question. Igbo and them. What are your impression of West African? Are they original? Are they converts to the Hebrew faith? I'm putting this stuff in. I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry, souls of our ancestors. I'm taking her question and rephrasing it. What do you think about Igbo and those different tribes that were West African? Were they converts? Were they original from Jerusalem and other places? Were they original Israelites? Were they converts? And what do you say about those West Africans? Because a lot of people that's getting into history, we attempt to argue that, and there are some that are in urban apologetics that would attempt to say that no, those people were not, because we have certain customs. You see them maybe keeping the Sabbath or circumcision that don't mean anything. What do you say to that?
All right, so if you go to Go Ask Your Pastor, episode 1, I did a video called Judaism May Be Native to West Africa. This is episode 1.
Okay, let me cut you over a second. This is not a book. There's a series of his videos from his YouTube channel. That's how come I told y'all to make sure y'all get that down pat. You go ahead and talk, brother. I'm trying to get my stuff on together right here.
Okay, so in this video, I go over a 24-page document that was published by the Cambridge University Press. And Cambridge University is out of England, I believe. And it was written by Ulysses Santa Maria. For the European, it's in the European Journal of Sociology Archives. If you have a JSTOR account, you can go read it in its entirety. If you set up a free account, it's one of your 100 available now that they've changed it. And in that document, he says several things. He makes several points. He says that the claim of Black people being Israel goes all the way back to slavery and was corroborated by slave testimony. That's number one. Another thing that 24-page report says is that they brought Judaism over here to America from West Africa. Another point he made in there is that Judaism may be native to West Africa. And then a final point that was made in that 24-page document is that the Igbo who were practicing Judaism were more likely to be targeted by plantation owners or people doing capturing. They wanted Igbos specifically because of their durability. And I personally believe it goes back to what it says in the Bible, that our ancestors built treasure cities, Pithom and Ramses. And so the Europeans, why not go grab the same people that built the treasure cities for Pharaoh? And we see on the back of the dollar, we see that big pyramid, and we see that they wanted to create a new order. So if you're going to build a second Egypt, who do you use? You use the people that built the first Egypt or parts of the first Egypt. And if you look throughout American history, look at everything that we've invented. These people have become the richest nation in the world off the backs of slaves, Israelite labor. But if you go into the inventions, the whole pharmaceutical industry, you can look that up. That was started by a Black man that taught them the extraction from plants. You can get into a gas mask, the street light, mobile refrigeration, open heart surgery. There's so many inventions that we came up with that has built this nation into what it is. And so these people didn't convert to Judaism. They were the original people. And we know that they were there because they got deported from Portugal because of the Inquisition. They were either forced to convert or they were deported. And that's just the facts of the situation. And unfortunately, the urban apologetics community is not honest. They will not talk about the deportation of Jews from Portugal to West Africa. And the one that did, who got called out, she got called out because she said they were Europeans, and refuses to provide a single piece of evidence, a single link to a source that says these people were European and deported into West Africa. So now if I'm reading multiple books that tells me that they were deported into West Africa, you have to explain what happened to these people in West Africa if they were deported there before the slave trade. The slave trade happens and they're no longer there. And we're talking about 10 lost tribes. Where did they go? These people didn't just disappear from West Africa. We knew an event took place on West Africa that scattered people all around. And unfortunately, the church doesn't want to talk about it or deal with it. And there's a Bible verse I do want to read. It's from, let me make sure, right here, Ezekiel chapter 20, verse 34. He says, "And I will bring you out from the people and will gather you out of the countries wherein ye were scattered with a mighty hand and with the stretched out arm and with fury poured out." So when he returns, he's going to regather his people from the countries wherein they were scattered. So let's just look. Scattered is not a voluntary act. Scattering is not the same as migrating to somewhere. So all you have to do is start looking at the history of the peoples. If they weren't scattered all over the earth, they don't fit the prophecies, period. Because God isn't just making light suggestions here. He's saying his people were scattered over the whole earth. So that's all you have to do is look at which people were scattered and which people were not scattered. Anybody not scattered, automatically eliminated from being Israel. And we see that the Igbo people and some of the other people from West Africa were scattered all over the world through this slave trade. And who did it? The Gentiles. If you go to Joel 3, what is God mad about? God is mad about two things: the Gentiles selling his people into slavery and scattering Judah specifically. And he says, you took my jewels and my precious things, and parting his land is the second thing. What goes back to the mandate for Palestine. Who was parting his land? England. And if England is parting the land, and United States was built from English, we know that some of the people from England, they rebelled and came over here to start the United States. That's just history in a nutshell. But these people parted his land. So he's talking to these people specifically because nobody else is parting his land. So a lot of the stuff we can look at in Bible prophecy and say, okay, if A plus B equals C, then these people are these people and these people over here must be these people. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't want to do that. They just want to stick to what they believe. They don't research it, and yet they have an opinion on it without doing any research. Can you hear me? Did I cut out? You still on mute? Your side is muted. I can't hear you.
Okay, no. I was trying to unmute it. Man, you said a lot right here. I'm going to ask you one thing. When you hear this term, when you hear this one term right here, spiritual Israel. Spiritual is, why are you worried about that? Spiritual Israel.
Spiritual Israel.
Yeah.
I believe the term spiritual Israel is somewhat of a cop-out. And here's why. You were on live with Eric Mason a few weeks ago, where he said that he does not believe in replacement theology. Yeah. He believes that there's one set of promises for Israel, one set of promises for the church. And so the situation we're looking at in context of everything is there's two ideologies that seem to not make sense. Some people will say, well, God fulfilled his promises to Israel through the church. Now, if I call you and tell you I'm gonna give you $500, and I turn around and I give it to Sister E and I say, you know what, Brian, I fulfilled my promise to give you that $500 by giving it to somebody else, you're going to look at me and say, no, that's not right.
That's right.
And so that's one misnomer. But then the second one is, if Israel has promises made to Israel and the church has promises made to the church is referred to as grafted in. The church is referred to as adopted. In what house does the adopted child come in and get to boast about living in a house and eating good food and all that other stuff and tell the natural born to shut up and don't talk about their promises? And that's what basically what the church has been doing. They say, okay, you're Israel. It doesn't matter. Shut up about your promises. You're the natural kid. Shut up. Don't talk about your inheritance, but we're going to talk about ours. Don't talk about your nationality, but we're going to talk about our adoption. Don't talk about anything you're going to inherit, but we're going to talk about that we're going to inherit the kingdom. And so there's this hypocrisy going on where the adopted son is basically coming in telling the natural born how to act and what to teach, and that we don't have a right to talk about any of the stuff we're going to receive as natural born inheritors.
Are you saved according to the book?
Of course.
You're talking a bunch of blackness right now. Are you saved according to the book? That's a question. That's a fair question.
Again, of course, I believe in Christ. I've confessed Christ. I've been baptized. And yet, even though I believe the salvation is for everybody and it has nothing to do with race, you will still have people ask me that. And yet we know that the people over in Israel right now deny Christ, they denounce Christ, and they don't get this kind of static or questioning.
We love them, yes, because they chose it.
Right.
All right. Anything else? And anything else you'd like to share? I want you to give your information out one more time. I'm a little late on my checkout over here, and I'm gonna put that link in there for y'all. Y'all know Barine always putting that link in there. Y'all look at y'all support the work. Come on, brother, share your information. We're gonna have you on again, and because we got to discuss this further. You brought out a lot of stuff, but I think this is good because like one thing I say is get it from the horse's mouth. So give them your information. They're going to come and they're going to have more questions, but I want them to know who's speaking. Tell us again, your handle, your Twitter handle, and all, everything you got.
All right. So my website is blackhistoryinthebible.com. You can check out all the videos and links and other evidence on that site. There's a ton of Bible studies on that site. Of course, I have Patreon set up under Dante Fortson, DanteFortson. My YouTube channel's underneath that. You can actually find all my social media links on blackhistoryinthebible.com. If you go on my main page of my YouTube channel, you'll find the links up top to that as well. But basically everything you want to find is under my personal name. If you want to contact me, the best way to do it is Facebook Messenger. Or if you're a patron, of course, you can contact me directly through Patreon Messenger. I don't really give out my email address or my personal phone number. A lot of people ask for it. But again, Facebook Messenger is the best way to get in touch with me personally if you have questions. But other than that, if you're just looking to research any one of my YouTube videos, just click the description. It does have all the links to the source that I'm using, or blackhistoryinthebible.com. Okay,
public said, I'm so proud of Brother Dante right now. Baker, I thought I did put it out there, Sister SK. I just told y'all he was getting ready to come up, but I didn't put the link out. We're gonna try to go on live and discuss some things afterward. But I gotta get out of here where I am. I'm working on some other stuff. We're gonna do something. All right, man. We appreciate having you on here. And we definitely going to have you on again, but you gave us something to think about, something to look into, and we're going to discuss this a little further, all right?
I appreciate you having me on.
No problem, brother. We definitely appreciate you. I'm going to stop this stream right